Oh no! No, the restaurant! The food!
This is the intro song to the podcast King of the What Now. Join us as we go on a journey, going to talk about pirates, battle and adventure. We think we're pretty funny. We hope you will too. Luffy, he's gotta be the king of something. We weren't really listening. Sorry about that. Hopefully he'll achieve his dreams. Yeah.
Hello, fellow adventurers of the Grand Line, and welcome to episode 16 of King of the What Now. We're here to discuss the anime One Piece. I'm Joel, longtime fan, and today I've cooked a delicious paella.
Paella? For me? Curtis, the co-host?
That's right, also the sous chef. My hat is taller than yours.
But that's not canon.
Yeah, it is. No hat is shorter than a really tall hat.
Okay,
I'd have to say.
True. That's true. I'm just saying that the owner had the taller hat.
Right, and he's the head chef.
But he's not. You said you're the sous chef.
You're the sous chef.
I'm confused.
You said, I'm Curtis, longtime fan. I said, right, you're the sous chef, and also the sous chef.
Oh. Okay. Let's get to the episode, Joel.
Episodes, yes. So we're back to watching the anime rather than, the movie like we did last week. And what we watched today were 4 episodes. Episodes 19, 20, 21, and 22. That first episode officially started the Baratie arc, but was a little bit removed from the other 3 episodes. So, Curtis, would you mind telling me just kind of in general strokes what you think were the most important parts of these episodes?
Okay, yeah. So, the first one was a backstory for Zoro. It was a flashback, basically, the whole episode. At the end of which, we meet some people who Zoro knows because they are also bounty hunters. Mm-hmm. The remaining 3, I'm just going to lump together. They go to a seafaring restaurant.
Yes. Shaped like a fish, which is pretty great aesthetic.
Oh, it is. Okay. Sorry, I didn't notice that before. I noticed it was a ship, but okay. Anyways.
You have noticed at one point that, Nami has orange hair, and that Zoro fights with 3 swords, maybe Luffy wears a hat. Those details you've noticed those, right?
Who's Luffy?
Exactly.
Yeah, so they go to the ship, and they're going there specifically because they want a chef, which there are details why they decided they needed a chef. What else? So they go there, Luffy damages the restaurant, and so he's trying to repay his debt by working there for a week/year.
By which you mean that the owner of the restaurant wants him to work there for a year, but Luffy's like, I've got important stuff to do. 1 week. And the guy was like, no, a year. 2 weeks? A year. 3 weeks?
Yeah, and I don't think they ever came to an actual number, so he's just kind of working there. Mm-hmm. We also meet the sous chef there, who's
Sanji, yes.
Yes, yeah. And what else? Oh, we find out that Sanji will basically feed anybody who's hungry. He's very into food, doesn't like to waste food. So eventually when a big bad pirate captain comes in who's very hungry and weak, Sanji feeds him.
Yes.
And as a result, the captain gets better and then attacks everybody there and says, you know what? This is a great ship, this restaurant. I'm going to take it. But first you need to feed my crew of 100 people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. That's basically where it ends.
Yeah, the other chefs kind of take out their swords and knives, comically large swords and knives, and kind of hold Sanji prisoner, and they're like, we don't want to feed this guy. He's known as, the ruler of these blue. He's known as a cheater and a liar and a rogue. And Sanji goes, well, I guess I'm not going to fight you guys. But then the head chef, who's kind of seems to have an antagonistic relationship with Sanji a little bit, he shows up with a giant bag, and he goes, this is food for 100 people. And everyone's like, Zeph, why? Why?
Yeah.
But yeah, it turns out that those 2 specifically have a thing about they don't let people go hungry, even if they don't have money to pay for it, even if they're pirates or navy or anything like that. Yeah.
So why don't we go back and fill in some details that might be good talking points.
The flashback establishes we now have a name for the second mysterious girl who showed up in this series. Because we already had a flashback with her back when Zoro was up on the crucifix.
Yes.
But we didn't get any details. We just saw a quick flash, and now we have a full backstory. Do you remember her name?
I was hoping you were going to say it. Wasn't it Koina?
You got it.
Yes!
I believe that if I continue to put you to the test, you will eventually begin to start remembering names.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So it turns out that when Zoro was younger, he wanted to be the absolute strongest. I'm kind of curious if there's anything that made him want to start down that path, because a lot of I don't know. Anyways, he goes to dojo and he challenges their strongest swordsmen, and when he beats them, he takes their sign, which I guess is a Japanese tradition. If you don't have a sign on your dojo, you're not respected.
Okay.
So he basically is going around collecting badges of honor, saying, here's all the people that I beat.
But wasn't that the first dojo he goes to? Because he says he's never touched a sword before.
I mean, okay, we'll have to look up the details, because I think in the anime or the manga, one version mentioned that he'd gone to other dojos before.
Okay.
But I think you're right that he's relatively new to this. He's young in this flashback. I tried to look it up, and it said that it was 12 years ago, which would mean that Zoro was 6, and Kuina, who I guess is a year older, would be 7. But she specifically talks about how she's starting to mature into a woman, going through puberty, which is not something that happens at the age of 7. So I think they're probably like 10 and 12 would sound a little bit closer to me. But Zoro comes to this dojo. He goes, I want to challenge you. And the guy who runs it, Koshiro, is like, sure, you can fight our strongest swordsman. It's a woman. And Zoro's like, you kidding? I can totally... And she kicks his butt immediately. And because he lost, he has to serve there as a student for like a year, or I don't know if there's a timeline. He just has to serve as a student there.
Yeah, that was kind of like, I think in his mind as a child, he saw that basically he made a bet with the dojo owner and said, if I win, I don't remember what he got.
He was going to...
I don't think he said the sign thing in the episode. I think that was probably something from the manga that you remember.
Maybe.
But if you win... No. If I win, I think he said, I get the dojo or something like that.
That's right.
And then if you win, then I'll be a student here. So in his mind, it was a punishment. I think the dojo master just found it funny. And so it was like, obviously he was going to lose, but he seems spunky. I might as well have him as a student sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, so Zoro ends up losing, he ends up being a student there, and he quickly becomes the number 2 student there. Number 1 amongst all the boys, but no matter how many times he fights Kuina, he can't win. And he also starts using the 2-sword style, which is a difference from present day when he uses all 3. He's never been able to beat her. And then she goes up and just dies off camera really suddenly. Maybe it's because Oda he wanted to try to condense the story down as quickly as possible. I myself find it really unsatisfying that this is kind of one of the first deaths we've seen, other than Usopp's mom, I think, is the only other one we've seen on camera. And it was just offhandedly mentioned, like, oh yeah, she fell down some stairs or something.
Yeah.
But Zoro now carries her sword, and that's why he uses the 3-sword style. Because he mastered the 2-sword style, but he keeps her sword in his mouth, which is kind of an interesting nod. You'd think that you'd put the worst sword in your mouth, but I guess he'd already trained with righty and lefty, so the sword has to go in your mouth at that point.
We should also point out, so like, Zoro, I don't know exactly what his motivation for wanting to be number 1 was originally, but Kuina, her motivation was because she wanted to prove everybody that just because she was a woman that she could, still be a good swordsman.
Be the best swordsman.
Yeah. Because her dad didn't believe that. Like, her dad was kind of a jerk in terms of, like, he specifically told her, you can't inherit this dojo because you're a woman, right?
Yes.
So I think she was trying to prove him wrong. And then later on, she tells Zoro this in one of their matches. And then makes a promise between the two of them, right? So Zoro's like, no, don't make excuses just because you're a woman. Don't say that one day I'll be stronger than you just because that's natural. Because that discounts all of the training that I'm doing, right?
Sure.
So they make a promise that one of the two of them will be the best.
Sure. And since she went off and died inconveniently, now he has to be the best because she can't hold up her end of the bargain, basically. Yep. Okay. Anything else from that episode that you think merits mentioning? The flashback specifically. There's some stuff in the present canon, but we'll cover that in a second.
No, I think we hit everything. I mean, he does some weird training stuff, but
yeah, if you've seen kind of like anime, you sort of know a little bit what it was.
Yeah.
It was like lifting heavy rocks and holding bars in his teeth and things like that. I will say, when we were watching the movie, you pointed out that it had a lot more kind of Japanese aesthetics, kind of more so like more traditional. And I'd say that Koshiro's dojo is also a pretty traditional Japanese setting, more so than some of the cities or towns that we've seen throughout.
yeah.
One Piece.
There is one funny bit before we move on that when he first walks in, he challenges Koina. They show him a thing of the practice swords, like a big barrel of them, and he says, "Can I take as many of these as I want?" And the dojo master's like, "Sure." So when he first starts off, he has 3 swords in each hand and 3 in his mouth, so 9 total.
And as he's talking, the ones in his mouth, he drops one every time he says a sentence. He hasn't mastered talking with the sword in his mouth
Yeah.
yet.
I mean, he ends up with 1 still in his mouth, but then I think as soon as Koina hits him once, it goes flying. So
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that would you say that there's anything about Koina that makes her the strongest, do you think? Like, do you think she's better at, I don't know, observing her surroundings or anything? Or do you think she's just a natural?
I'd say she's just a natural. I don't think they didn't hint at anything at the very least.
Yeah. Most shows that I watch in anime, they'll have, like, if there's a character who shows up and they're, like, naturally a genius, there's almost always, like, kind of a secondary reason, you know, like, oh, they were born and they learned to listen really well, and for some reason that means they can predict their opponent's movements. But yeah, I think she's just kind of naturally good at swords in different ways. You will learn more a little bit about Koshiro the dad, and I think that he's a much better swordsman than he lets on, and I think that she knows I don't think he's taught her his secrets, but I think she just kind of naturally was able to watch him. Okay. So next up in after the flashback, Zoro wakes up and we meet. Do you know their names?
So Johnny?
Yes.
I don't remember the second guy's name. It
Yasaku?
starts with a K. Oh wait, no, it didn't start.
It has
with
a K near the end. Yeah.
Okay, Yasaku.
Or Yosaka. Oh no.
See, it wasn't just me. You don't remember either.
Yeah. We have one guy who has a very traditional English name, I would say, and then one guy who has more of a Japanese sounding name.
Yes, and they are very important for all of like 30 seconds.
Sure. Yeah, they're basically idiots. One of them attacks Luffy, and he's swiping a sword, and Luffy dodges, and Luffy just throws him across the ship, and he goes, "So close. We were close equals, and no, you were nowhere near."
I take back what I said. They actually are somewhat important because, so what happens is Johnny shows up, right? And his buddy has scurvy because he hasn't been getting proper nutrition. So Nami helps out and gets a bunch of citrus fruit in him so that...
Well, she orders Luffy and Usopp to do it, and they almost choke him by shoving as many limes into his mouth as possible.
Which apparently does the trick. But so he's getting better. And then that starts a conversation that's like, we should have somebody who can ensure that we're getting the nutritional, the nutritions that we need so that we don't die out here at sea. We should go get a cook. And then Johnny's like, I know just the place to get a cook.
Yes. So these are the 2 bounty hunters, which you've already mentioned know Zoro. Let's see. We go to the restaurant and we meet Lieutenant Fullbody. Do you have anything to say about that guy?
He's trying to think of kind of just like an arrogant
Yeah, he's
guy.
a tool, basically.
Yeah, that's the word I want.
The first thing we see with him is he's with a beautiful woman, and he's all like, "Oh yes, I'm so smooth." He sees Luffy and attacks them with a cannon because they're pirates, and he makes fun of Johnny and Yosaku for not being better bounty hunters. He's flirting with this restaurant at the woman. He's flirting with this woman at the restaurant, and the chef shows up, Sanji, and he goes, "Yes, I'm detecting a fragrance of this, and yada yada, and yes, is this from this province?" And Sanji goes, "Nope, not at all," and walks off, and the guy gets mad because he was just humiliated in the entire restaurant. And then he tries to get his revenge by pretending that there is a fly in his soup. And Sanji goes, "No, I don't think that was in there. It looks like he's swimming. Is he swimming?" And people laugh at him again, and he gets all mad. Lieutenant Fullbody is more or less a forgettable character. Slight spoilers. You see him again later, like much, much later, and he's still the same idiot.
Oh, okay.
He's not important, but he does have cool, like, screws in his knuckles so that, like, when he punches people, it probably does more damage. But I'm sure that would not help him at all in a fight. Sanji took him out pretty easily.
Yeah, I was gonna say they fought and Sanji took him out mostly because he broke the bowl with all the soup in it that he gave him, or that Sanji gave to Full Body. So Sanji was pretty pissed.
It's actually interesting because we don't know everything about Sanji's character, but I'd say that traditionally he has a couple of triggers, kind of like how Luffy's trigger is if someone calls something their treasure and it gets attacked, he gets upset on their behalf. Sanji, typically, he's a bit of a womanizer, sometimes in a kind of pervy, gross way, but sometimes in more of a chivalrous way. It depends on the scene. But he likes women, he doesn't like food to be wasted, and he also, you'll find out, treasures his hands, because if you don't have your hands, you can't cook. Mm-hmm. And so during this scene with him and Full Body, or Lieutenant Full Body steps on his hand. That's the first trigger. He gets mad and backhands the woman he's with when she tries to calm him down. So that's trigger number 2. And he wasted the soup. That's trigger number 3. So it's no surprise that by the time Zoro and Nami and Usopp arrive on the scene, Sanji's just mad and holding this dude up by the throat and just like, don't you freaking dare.
Yeah. Oh, so didn't you have a bit about Sanji's name?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Usopp's name, as I already explained, has the word lie in it. That's kind of interesting. Sanji's name was originally going to be Naruto, or Naruto, however you want to pronounce that. I've always pronounced it Naruto. But it turns out that as Oda was about to introduce this character, another manga came out that was really popular, whose main character was also named Naruto. So he had to change it from Naruto to Sanji.
And, like, it means something about, like, swirl or something, right?
Yes, it means swirl, and so I think Naruto the ninja is named after it because he eats ramen and has, like, a swirl pattern on top of it or something. And then Sanji has a twirly eyebrow. Do you want to try to get... I guess people are probably watching this along with us or have seen pictures, but Sanji, you can only ever see one of his eyes. I think it's his right eye, and his eyebrow is twirly above it. That's why a couple of episodes ago I mentioned something about Twirly Boy is my favorite. Twirly Boy is what I call him. There might be someone in canon who calls him that, but that's my nickname for Sanji, the chef.
Okay. So you mentioned that at Full Body shot at the Straw Hats with the cannon.
Yes.
So that's actually part of how Luffy ends up being indebted to the restaurant. So what happens is he tries to catch the cannonball and shoot it back at the
Marines.
At the Marines. Like he makes himself into a giant slingshot. But one of his hands slips. So instead of shooting it back at the ship that shot at them, he ends up turning slightly and then shooting at the restaurant.
It's pretty fantastic. Really quick, do you want to describe in like 2 or 3 sentences your impression of Zeph and kind of his character design?
Yeah, I mean, so Zeph just kind of seems like a gruff old pirate. I'd say not like the nicest person. It's not like he goes out of his way to be mean, but he's just kind of rough. He's
pretty gruff, yeah. His people skills could use a little bit of work. The thing that I love about him so much is he's the first character to actually have the peg leg, which is a very traditional pirate aesthetic. Yeah. I actually don't know if we meet very many others who have peg legs, so he might be one of the only ones. And he also, the actual height of your hat, I believe, literally is demonstrative of your rank in the real world chefs or whatever. Like, sous chefs have a higher hat than other people.
Yeah.
But Zeph, his hat is like 2 stories tall.
Yeah.
And like he uses it to bonk Luffy on the head in one scene and stuff like that. So he has a lot of visual stuff going on, and it's absolutely wonderful. He's great. So overall, what did you think of these episodes? What was your impression?
So they were... No, I liked them. I feel like the show is getting more interesting as we get going.
We're getting into this weird situation where the power dynamics are starting to shift a little bit. Like in the Zoro arc, right? Zoro captured by Axe-Hand Morgan. There was really the Marines, and then there was Zoro kind of headbutting with each other. But in this arc, we have 2 pirates. We've met Gin, something like that. Ghin. That's the first one that Sanji fed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Sanji originally fed this one pirate who was starving, and then he left and he got his Commodore and brought him back, and that's Don Krieg. And then Sanji fed him, and then, okay. But anyways, you have a little bit of nuance there because Gin is actually very thankful that he was fed, and he wanted to feed his captain because he respects his captain, but he didn't want to attack this restaurant because Sanji was such a nice person. And then you have Sanji and Zeph who have a complicated relationship, but also some of the other chefs seem to be jealous of the relationship and of the way Sanji conducts himself, and you're starting to get a lot more character interactions, and kind of it's not two-sided anymore. There's like 3 or 4 or 5 different things going on all at once.
Yeah. I think that helps. Like the additional characters.
Yes. The strength of One Piece by far is the scenes where the Straw Hats interact with each other or perhaps with some kind of an outsider. The scene where it's all of them at a table and Sanji's waitering for Nami and Luffy and Zoro are messing with each other and Usopp's laughing, like that might be my favorite scene from these episodes.
Yeah, I feel like this is probably like, maybe it's just Oda's writing style, but he seems to do a better job with the ensembles than just like
some other
individual characters or like smaller groups of characters.
I would agree with that. Now, one thing about these episodes that I find kind of interesting, so as we pointed out, the first episode was a bunch of flashbacks. Why put Zoro's flashback there instead of right where it's relevant? Do you have a theory about that?
What do you mean? Oh, you mean like at some point in the future where it might be more relevant?
Sure, yeah.
That's a good question. You know what? I'm not really sure. Maybe it'll pay off some more later in this arc. Like maybe... I know that whole episode, because like even the ending, the way it ties into getting to the restaurant ties in a little bit to Zoro's past. But you didn't need the flashback to do that, right? Because we already knew he was a bounty hunter. I'm not sure. I'm curious to see if it'll pay off.
Yeah, in retrospect, it feels kind of weird, and I guess it makes sense to kind of put a flashback in between arcs. Like, we haven't really started the Baratie at that point. But, slight spoiler again, I'm bad at not spoiling things, but there will be a couple of episodes that are more Zoro-centric in this arc, but just put the flashback in with them. You know, if episodes 26 and 27 are Zoro, then have 25 be the flashback.
Yeah, but I think... like, if they are within this arc, it makes more sense to put it in before the arc starts, so that way when the episodes come out, it's like boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
As opposed to, like, having, you know, this whole thing going on and then suddenly, like, dropping out.
Put on the brakes. Okay.
Though I guess there are a lot of shows that do that, too, so maybe it's just, I don't know. I guess that's kind of like a creative decision.
Sure. Okay, let's see. I have a couple of other questions that are a little bit different from the usual ones, the list that we ask. So... this Lieutenant Fullbody, he calls and he makes a reservation at the Baratie. Curious how he did that. He probably sent a courier or something. But he makes a reservation. He says, serve this wine so I can pretend to detect the whiff of whatever and I can deduce what type of wine it is. And Sanji gave them a different type of wine. Do you see a reason for Sanji to have done this? I will say... Sanji and Lieutenant Fullbody having that kind of fight, that conflict makes sense, but it was started because Sanji decided, apparently on a whim, to switch out the wine types.
2 theories. One, they mentioned that all their waiters are gone, which is why Sanji is serving them in the first place. So it could just be that he didn't know, right? It's not something he typically does, so he probably didn't check the reservation or anything.
Oh, okay.
The second one, which... I like more, would be that he saw that, said, no, that's a stupid choice that doesn't match. Like, that doesn't pair well with what I'm going to serve you. So then he changed it out because he knew better.
Because he's a chef who, okay. I really like that second theory a lot. All right, another question. So Luffy's talking to Zeph, and Zeph goes, I need you to pay me back. And Luffy goes, great. I don't have any money. And Zeph goes, well, then work here for a year. And Luffy says, I've waited 10 years to become a pirate. I can't wait another 1 year working here. Do you have any theories as to why Luffy had to wait 10 years to go on his adventure?
So how old is he right now? He's 17?
17, yes.
So, and I'm guessing 7 then was probably about when Shanks left.
Okay.
Just like, I guess, roughly. I don't know. That's a good question because... So on the one hand, I guess from my perspective, 17 is still pretty young. Though depending on like the universe it's set in, that might be considered, more than old enough to leave home.
Sure.
Especially if you... Never mind. That's a reference. But, that's a good question because, like, obviously... 7-year-old kid going out and joining a pirate crew. That's too young. I know no pirate crew is going to take a 7-year-old, but they might take like a 13-year-old, right? As like a deckhand or something. Like there's stuff that he could do at that point. So that's a good question. I'm not sure what would keep him for 10 years because it didn't seem like he had any parental figures before he started. At least because it was just kind of, maybe he did and we just didn't see him. They were off screen, but he was just kind of hanging out on the island, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think he might have just waited until his 17th birthday, but being from the States myself, 18 seems like a more logical, or maybe like 20, because that's a round number. But maybe he just got impatient. Maybe maybe Shanks inspired him when he was 7, and he's like, I gotta be a little bit older. And so he got to like 17, he's like, I can't wait another year, I gotta go right now.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's probably some reason for why he couldn't get off the island before then, because my assumption would be that since Shanks left and didn't come back, he was like, I'm going, right? And that something was probably holding him back.
Okay. Let's go back to my regular questions that I like to ask. All right, so what do you think will happen in the next episode? Obviously, there's going to be a fight between Don Krieg's going to try to take this ship, probably. That seems the most likely. Most of these arcs end with some kind of a battle. But do you see any complications or a way that the battle might play out?
Well, I think the Straw Hat crew will probably help the restaurant because they still want Sanji to join. Luffy already counts him among the crew, even though Sanji has made it clear that he has not joined, which I feel like is just par for the course at this point.
We should mention that Luffy found Sanji and saw that Sanji was a nice guy and said, join my crew. And Sanji said, I can't leave the ship. We don't know why. Luffy asks and he goes, I don't have to tell you. The answer is no. But there seems to be some kind of a bond keeping him there.
Which is interesting because at first I thought, well, maybe he's like indebted to Zeph, right? But then Zeph told him to leave and like gave him kind of like told him, you're a crappy chef and all this stuff. Stuff that is like objectively not true, and I'm assuming Zeph knows is not true, at least on the bad chef side. So I'm confused what's going on there. So I'm assuming in the next episode, or I guess the next episode that we record, depending on how long this arc is,
yes,
we will have an answer to that. I'm hoping so. And sometime in the next few episodes, we should get some sort of answer to what their relationship is and why Sanji doesn't want to leave, and why I feel like Zeph is trying to get him to go out on his own.
Yep, I completely agree, and I'm comfortable telling you that we get a more satisfactory answer as you flesh out the characters a little bit more.
Okay,
but back to the main question because I got distracted mentioning that detail. How do you see the Straw Hats fighting the Don Krieg pirates? He had a pretty impressive armor with like guns hidden in there and stuff. How do you think they'll be able to deal with that? Do you see any strategies?
Well, Luffy's basically impervious to the guns.
Okay.
So Luffy could take him. Oh, excuse me. Luffy could take him on.
Have you seen Luffy punch through metal though?
No. He'd probably have to tag team with someone. Zoro might be able to get the armor off depending on how it's attached.
Okay.
But I think it didn't look like it was held on by any exposed straps or anything. So I think Zoro's swords might also not be effective. So then it's probably... I could see Usopp coming up with some plan to help get the armor off.
Something tricky, kind of... Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. I'm just curious if you've started to think in terms of One Piece yet, and you're getting there. But, this show is very good at throwing unexpected curves. I'm just trying to see if I keep asking, will you eventually, figure out something really crazy that ends up coming true? And then you'll feel really good about yourself if that's the case. Okay, so of these episodes that we watched, who is MVP?
So far, it'd have to be Sanji.
Sanji is an excellent choice. I make no attempts to hide the fact that Sanji's my favorite. I don't think that he maybe is objectively the best. I think that there's a lot of different characters that have their shining moments, but he's always resonated with me for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I really like him, and he's charitable to the detriment of almost getting people killed, which is kind of a bad thing, but also kind of badass in its own way. So, yeah, absolutely. All right, Curtis, my favorite question. Did anything feel like foreshadowing in these episodes?
Well, it would have if I was paying attention, Joel.
So viewers were watching the episode, and Curtis is trying to come up with a poem about Dracula, or about the Hawk-Eyed Man.
It was Stan Fan, the Hawk-Eyed Man, Joel.
Okay.
It was a wonderful poem, and if you guys don't hear it at the beginning of this episode, I will cry silently.
But anyways, so Curtis looked away for like 3 seconds, and it was the 3 seconds he needed for something to be foreshadowed for him.
I can tell you what you told me it was that I missed. So there were two things. One of which I obviously got, even though I didn't realize it was foreshadowing at the time. Mm-hmm. And that was the Hawk-Eyed Man. So when they meet up with Zoro's old buddies, one of them happens to mention, "Oh, we have news of the Hawk-Eyed Man," and Zoro lights up and smiles, right? Mm-hmm. So there's something there. Zoro must be looking for him. I'm guessing it's some bounty or something. I mean, I guess it could be a bounty or a friend, but my assumption is a bounty. The other one, the one that I 100% missed, was the bounty hunters have a bunch of wanted posters that they have for people they're trying to find.
Or have captured. Some of them were crossed out.
And they get kind of scattered across the ground. And Nami sees one of them, and then her face darkens. Mm-hmm.
It does the anime thing where, like, there's shadows over the eyes so you can't see the pupils or whatever, and she clearly, like, crumples up this poster. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've now outlined how they foreshadowed it. How do you think those will play out?
I mean, those are probably two other arcs. Okay. I'd assume those are individual arcs. So there'll be an arc, a Zoro-based arc, involving the Hawk-Eyed Man.
Okay. And you think that it makes more sense for it to be a bounty?
I think so. I think it makes more sense to be a bounty than anything else. I mean, the other things, a couple other possibilities. One, some friend he's been trying to get a hold of, which I find unlikely.
Yeah, Zoro doesn't have friends. Yeah,
it could be that because he's still on a quest to be the best swordsman, it could be someone who could teach him something specific. We haven't seen any evidence that he's trying to still learn. It seems more like he's just experienced through fighting, right?
Yep.
But that would be interesting. It would be like something new about the character that we haven't known. So that could be another possibility. I'd rank that up there, like tied with Bounty, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts.
I'll throw out another one out there. Zoro's dad. Because as far as we know, Zoro doesn't seem to have any parents. We've seen one flashback of him as a kid, and he's wandering on his own, and he just stays at this dojo. So who knows what his story is, but that's something to consider. And then the wanted poster for, I'm not sure if you saw the name, but I'm happy to tell you that the name was Arlong. And what do you have any thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, so she took it and crumpled it up?
Yeah.
Like kept it?
Yeah.
Or no, so she crumpled it up in anger, or she crumpled it up and hid it so nobody would see it?
I have no idea.
Okay, couple thoughts. One, if it's anger, it could be somebody who has wronged her in the past that she wants revenge on.
Okay. We know she hates pirates, so that would kind of make sense.
Oh, that's a good point. So it could be the reason that she hates pirates. My only other thought when you mentioned it originally was that it could have been like, so if she had taken it and hidden it, then maybe it was like
her dad.
Yes, it was her dad.
It was her dad, the Hawk-Eyed Man, and it turns out that she and Zoro are brother and sister.
Yes, and that makes that, that kiss they shared very awkward.
That was immediately after Zoro got his hand cut off, and he had to have it replaced with a crab shell claw.
Reference joke!
Thank you, secret co-host. Yes, that is a reference to Star Wars Episode 4.
All right. Now, do you think any of this was filler?
Wait a second, I never finished my answer about Nami.
Oh, really sorry, I cut you off about the dad. Okay, sorry.
Okay, yeah. No, my second thought was maybe it's like a pirate she used to work for that maybe she owes a debt to. Something like that. Now the question you were asking.
Right, yes. Do you think any of these 4 episodes were filler?
No.
Okay.
The only one that could have potentially been filler is the flashback, but because it fleshes out Zoro's character, I find that very unlikely.
Yes, I would completely agree. Goodness gracious. Kuina is canon, and Zeph and Sanji and Johnny and Yosaku and Lieutenant Fullbody, they're all canon.
One thing that is not canon, Kuina's grave.
Yes.
You told me this.
Yes. I
guess that. I looked at that tombstone and I was like, that just doesn't look right, Joel.
You're killing me. Stop. No, yeah, so really quick trivia note. We do actually see Kuina's grave in the manga, but it's much, much later, like chapter 600 or something, and this is like chapter 30 or 40 in the manga. So they show Kuina's graveyard in the anime during the flashbacks, but it does not match the one you see in the manga, and the manga is, of course, the source of all canonized material. So the grave, there's 2 of them, and one of them's a fake one.
You know what this means?
What does this mean?
She's not actually dead.
Ooh. She'll return in Avengers 4. Reference joke! Sorry. All right, Curse, do you have anything else that you want to talk about? Any kind of discussions that you think would fit right now in the series as opposed to later? He's giving me the deer in the headlights.
No, I'm thinking. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Is there anything funny going on with... No, I think we basically touched on everything that I would like to talk about, so...
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We've now gotten past what I call the talky parts of the Baratie arc, and next time we'll be able to get into more punchy parts of the Baratie arc. Official outro goes here. So ends the next leg of the King of the What Now adventure. We're sad to see you go, but we'll be here next week. If you crave some social interaction with us in the meantime, you can find us on all sorts of different media. We have Gmail, Patreon, and Tumblr. All of those are King of the What Pod. King of the What Pod at gmail.com, patreon.com/King of the What Pod, kingofthewhatpod.tumblr.com. Our Twitter handlers are a little bit different. You can reach me at KOTWN_pod.
And you can contact me, Curtis, at Pirate Co-host. Also, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on whatever platform you're using to listen. Not only will this help others find the podcast, but your constructive feedback will help us improve the show as we go.
Thanks so much for giving us a listen. Until next time, follow your dreams and protect your treasure.
Remember, it doesn't need to be literal treasure.
Hello, fellow adventurers of the Grand Line. This is Joel from the future. If you're watching the episodes at home before you watch the podcast episodes, King of the What Now, episode 17, will cover 4 episodes of the anime, episodes 23, 24, 25, and 26. Those are Protect Baratie, the Great Pirate Zeph the Red Leg, Hawkeye Mihawk, Swordsman Zoro falls into the sea, the emerge of the superb kicking skill, Sanji versus the Iron Wall Pearl, and Zeph and Sanji's dream, the Sea of Dreams, all blue.